We caught him. He was locked away. But the killing never stopped. In 2006, police celebrated the capture of Daniel Kessler, a serial killer responsible for at least 9 confirmed deaths. They called it a win. The city exhaled. The headlines read, "Serial Killer Off the Streets." But inside the walls of Hainesworth Correctional Facility, bodies kept showing up. And what happened next, no one expected. Daniel Kessler was the textbook definition of evil hiding in plain sight. A former nurse, he used his medical knowledge to end lives quietly. His victims were mostly elderly. At first, no one suspected foul play. But when patterns emerged, patients dying just after Kessler's night shifts, an internal whistleblower triggered a full investigation. In 2006, he was arrested, convicted on multiple counts of first-degree murder. Kessler was sentenced to life without parole. No one thought he'd ever hurt another soul. But 13 months after his arrival at Hainesworth, inmate number 4429 was found dead in his cell, strangled with a wire that should never have been there. And if you think that's disturbing, wait until you hear how the wire got in. Prison officials called it a freak incident. The wire, they said, was smuggled in through a food delivery crate. No connection to Kessler, nothing to investigate. But then it happened again. Another inmate, this time in a different block, was found with his throat slit. The wound, surgically precise. An anonymous tip finally reached Internal Affairs. Check Kessler's mail. They did. Hidden in his legal correspondence were hand-drawn maps, names, schedules, cryptic codes embedded in Bible verses. It was a playbook for murder. Inmates began to talk. Some were terrified, others oddly loyal. They called him Doc. One confessed during interrogation. He promised protection, said the guards worked for him too. Did they? The officer asked. A pause, then one of them did. Kessler hadn't just manipulated inmates. He had seduced a corrections officer, Marta Delgado, a single mother, working double shifts, drowning in debt. It started with friendly chats, then letters, then promises. Delgado began smuggling in blades, wires, even pills disguised as vitamins. In return, Kessler helped her daughter secure a fake scholarship from a charity he'd set up through a contact on the outside. When Internal Affairs raided Kessler's cell, they found 3 hollowed-out books with coded messages, a list of 14 names, and a single phrase scribbled over and over: confession is control. That's when they realized he never stopped killing. He just changed locations. Delgado was arrested. She pleaded guilty to conspiracy and was sentenced to 18 years. 3 more inmates came forward. Each described how Kessler would assign targets, claiming they were informants or pedophiles, even when they weren't. He weaponized paranoia, turned prison into a game. One victim, Jamal Reeves, was just 19. He was in for a nonviolent theft charge. Days before he was set for parole, he was poisoned. His mother, speaking at a press conference, said he was supposed to come home. Instead, I buried him. Kessler was transferred to solitary confinement. No more contact with staff, no more mail, no more books. But even then, the prison went on lockdown just 2 months later. Why? A guard reported finding a note under his windshield. One line only: the doc sees everything. The official record says Daniel Kessler now lives in silence, but insiders claim he still communicates through ventilation grates. Others say the attacks have stopped, but one inmate, granted early release in 2024, refused to speak publicly. When pressed, he simply said, "You don't talk about the doc, not if you want to stay alive." So the question remains, did the killings finally stop? Or did Kessler just recruit someone on the outside? If you found this story disturbing, fascinating, or just unbelievable, subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell and follow us as we uncover the truth behind the people the system claims are contained. Because sometimes the most dangerous ones are already inside the walls. The murders continued inside a high-security prison, where movement is limited, calls are monitored, and visitors are heavily screened, people were still dying. Inmates turning up strangled, guards too afraid to talk, and somehow this man, already locked away for multiple killings, was connected to it all. His name was Marcus Valon, and if you thought the killing stopped when he was caught, think again, because what investigators uncovered next wasn't just shocking, it shattered everything they thought they knew about control, surveillance, and justice. But the most terrifying part? Marcus never touched another victim, not with his own hands. Marcus was serving 5 consecutive life sentences. Convicted, sealed, done. His cell? Small. No visitors allowed for years, yet the pattern was undeniable. One by one, inmates began dying in ways eerily similar to Marcus's prior victims. Missing fingernails, Bible pages stuffed in their mouths, markings carved into the back of their necks, identical to his known signature. The prison administration dismissed the similarities. A coincidence, they claimed, until a new guard named Elliot Hayes found something that chilled him to his core. It was a folded note tucked inside a food tray. It read, "Deliver, 7:40 p.m., clean hands, 2 taps." The handwriting matched perfectly with Marcus's previous jailhouse letters, and the inmate who received it found dead the next morning. But this wasn't the only note, and what Marcus had created was more than a plan. It was a system. The FBI was called in. An internal investigation began. They traced dozens of messages, passed through laundry bins, under food trays, etched faintly onto soap bars. Each message was short, coded, cold. Preacher walks at noon. 3 turns, don't face him. He knows the 4th name. None made sense on their own, but when lined up in sequence, they formed a kind of map, a network. Marcus had built an invisible chain of influence. He wasn't killing, he was commanding. Some inmates were loyal out of fear. Others believed he was a prophet. He called himself the shepherd, and he promised salvation or punishment. Then came the twist even agents couldn't anticipate. One of the murdered inmates? A former priest. And on his body, carved under his skin, was a single word: false. That's when Agent Carla Reyes made the connection. Every inmate who had been killed had once worked with Marcus in group therapy. Every one of them had challenged his redemption narrative. He wasn't just silencing enemies, he was rewriting his own mythology. Inside prison, with a flock of devout believers, wardens' reports had been altered. Cameras malfunctioned. 3 guards had quit, with no explanation. And buried deep in the visitor logs, a woman named Sarah Vale, a former psychiatric nurse, once fired for unethical conduct. Her signature appeared 7 times across 2 years, and each visit corresponded with a murder. When the FBI finally located her apartment, what they found inside was terrifying. A corkboard filled with Marcus's old case files, a timeline of inmate movements, and a manifesto titled The Doctrine of Cleansing. Marcus had a disciple, and she wasn't the only one. One final letter was intercepted by Agent Reyes. It read, "Phase 3 begins at Black Ridge. Our hands are clean, but judgment is not finished. The shepherd has more lambs." Black Ridge? Another prison? 2 states away, and 3 weeks later. An inmate turned up dead, same markings, same pages, same word carved under his skin. False. Marcus was still in solitary, but his reach was growing. The question now wasn't just how he was doing it, it was who else believed him, and how many more had joined his cause. The Black Ridge revelation. Black Ridge Correctional Facility was supposed to be different, a fortress with cutting-edge surveillance, biometric checkpoints, and no history of inmate-on-inmate violence. But on a cold Thursday morning, a correctional officer found inmate Thomas Laird, dead, kneeling, hands folded in prayer, a page from the Bible taped to his mouth and carved beneath his rib cage. One word burned through the silence: false. Everyone thought the nightmare ended with Marcus Valon's isolation. They were wrong, because what was happening now wasn't a copycat. It was a continuation, and the trail that followed would reveal how Marcus extended his reach, far beyond solitary walls. Thomas Laird had no enemies, no prior incidents, He was a quiet inmate scheduled for parole. The autopsy? No bruising, no defensive wounds. Toxicology came back clean, and yet, his cell told a story. The bed? Untouched. The light? Left on. And inside the mattress, a sealed envelope. Inside, a photo. Sarah Vale, Marcus's former psychiatric nurse turned disciple, sitting alone at a diner table, smiling. Across the image, scrawled in red ink, she delivered, "Now it's your turn." But the photo wasn't addressed to Thomas. It was meant for Officer Glenn Harrow, a veteran guard at Blackridge. And when investigators dug into Harrow's financials, they found a single, unexplained deposit, $17,000, from a church that didn't exist. A raid on Harrow's home unearthed what agents feared most: a safe, hidden behind a false wall, letters signed, The Shepherd, bearing Marcus's prison ID, a smuggled blueprint of Blackridge's lower tier, and a handwritten list titled, The Unrepentant. Every name on that list had either opposed Marcus during therapy sessions or spoken out about his behavior. Almost all were now dead. Most disturbing of all, a USB stick labeled The Sermon. The video was crude, recorded in secret inside prison. Marcus looked straight into the camera, calm, confident, cold. The sheep are deaf to kindness. Only the rod wakes them. Cleansing is not cruelty, it's obedience. Then he named Blackridge. And then he named another facility, Millstone Federal. Millstone was the last prison Marcus stayed in, before sentencing, a facility known for housing the worst of the worst, violent offenders, ex-gang enforcers, even a few former cops. No link had ever been made until now. The team pulled visitation logs and found a hidden appendix, private clergy sessions redacted from public view. There were 4 mysterious names, but one stood out: L. Vale, Sarah Vale's younger brother. He'd visited 6 times under the guise of clergy outreach, and the last visit, 2 days before a double stabbing. Both victims had challenged Marcus's spiritual rhetoric during Bible study sessions months earlier. The murders had seemed random. Now, they looked surgical. The shepherd didn't need freedom. He had followers, blueprints, believers. The FBI launched a top-secret initiative, Operation Cloister, a review of unexplained prison deaths across 5 states. They discovered 17 cases over 7 years. All featured religious symbolism, all targeted former associates of Marcus. All occurred at facilities Marcus had been connected to, directly or indirectly. Even more unsettling, a manifesto, titled The Doctrine of Cleansing. Agents found multiple printed copies, and it wasn't just Marcus's writing anymore. There were annotations, additions. Someone else was expanding it. A movement had formed. At an abandoned farmhouse, once owned by Sarah Vale's uncle, agents made the discovery that changed everything. Inside a locked bedroom, a wall lined with photos of correctional officers, maps of 5 different prisons, inmate rosters, schedules, bank transfers to offshore accounts, and a single chilling centerpiece, a corkboard titled Phase 4, Beyond the Walls. Pinned below it was a quote from Marcus: "The sheep outside the fence must hear the voice of the shepherd." Next to it, a list of community figures: a parole officer in Arizona, a juvenile counselor in New Jersey, a social worker in Texas. None were in prison, but all had once been part of Marcus's group therapy sessions when he was first incarcerated. 2 had already reported break-ins. 1 had gone missing. The plan was no longer confined to bars and cells. Phase 4 was out in the open. A lead agent, Carla Reyes, began to suspect Marcus was no longer in control. Yes, he started the movement, but now he was symbolic. Someone else was pulling the strings. Then came a letter sent directly to Reyes. "The shepherd will fall silent. The lambs will rise. Phase 4 is coming for you." It was postmarked from a small town near St. Augustine, Florida. No prisons nearby, but it was where Sarah Vale grew up. And more importantly, it was where her brother Luke was last seen. Agents arrived at a rural church on the outskirts of St. Augustine. The doors chained shut, the windows covered. Inside, what they found was beyond chilling. Pews rearranged in a circular pattern, candles melted into symbols matching Marcus's mark, audio speakers playing Marcus's sermons on loop. And in the center, an altar, not religious, but operational, stacked with folders, ID cards, photographs, faces of former correctional staff and their families. At the base of the altar, one large document titled Phase 4 Targets, 50 names, all civilians, all outside prison walls. As agents swept the church, one final discovery came in. Marcus Velen had attempted suicide the night before, a failed attempt. But inside his cell, hidden beneath the sink, was a note. They don't need me anymore. The lambs walk freely, and soon, so will their fire. Marcus may have been the mind behind the doctrine, but someone else was now its executioner. The lambs walk free. The movement had a name now. They called themselves the Lambs of Judgment, and their mission no longer contained to prison cells. Their reach had extended into the streets, into neighborhoods, schools, even courtrooms. It all started with Marcus Velen, but now the shepherd had fallen silent, and the lambs had risen. And the next target wasn't behind bars. It was a federal judge, living in open daylight. Judge Clarice Rennings lived alone in a modest wooded home in upstate Pennsylvania. She was best known for overseeing the sentencing of Marcus Velen, a grueling 3-week trial that ended with 5 life sentences. At the time, she thought the case was closed, but on a rainy Monday morning, her dog began barking at something on the porch. It wasn't a package, it was a burnt Bible, and inside it, a note. The shepherd is no longer your enemy. Now, you answer to us. The next day, her tires were slashed. A week later, her home security system was disabled for 5 hours. And then, the FBI showed up, because she wasn't the only one. Across 4 states, 5 individuals involved in Marcus's original trial were being followed. A juror's daughter was nearly abducted. The court stenographer's house was ransacked. Marcus's public defender was found unconscious in a church pew with the word unworthy painted on her forehead in red chalk. The FBI's behavioral unit launched a full investigation. At the center of it all, Luke Vale, Sarah Vale's younger brother. He had vanished, but digital traces appeared. Secure emails sent through Tor, cryptocurrency payments to private contractors, drone footage of targets sent from anonymous accounts. Luke was no longer just a messenger. He had become a general. And he wasn't alone. Agent Carla Reyes, now heading the case, received a flash drive at her Washington, D.C. field office. No return address. Inside it, surveillance footage, taken from a private security camera 2 weeks earlier. It showed a makeshift training facility in the woods outside Asheville, North Carolina. Masked figures, practicing formations, physical drills. One man stood in front, reading from a script. It wasn't Marcus's voice, but the text, verbatim lines from The Doctrine of Cleansing. Pinned to a tree behind him, photographs of 5 people, all involved in prison reform, all vocal critics of Velen's past influence, all missing. The lambs weren't just acting in vengeance. They were organizing for something bigger, something timed, something scheduled. The FBI began searching for patterns in recent crimes labeled as unrelated. A prison chaplain's home burned down. A parole board member's vehicle exploded outside a courthouse. An education reformist's private Zoom call hijacked with a threat video quoting scripture. None of these seemed connected until Agent Reyes found a symbol, a faint triangle burned into the corner of the threat footage. It matched a symbol found years ago on one of Marcus Velen's notebooks, but it wasn't religious. It was mathematical. The Greek symbol, delta, in their manifesto, it meant change. But on the documents they uncovered, it meant D-Day, D for doctrine, D for detonation, D for dissent. A countdown had already begun. With pressure rising, a rogue tip led agents to a backwater motel outside Knoxville, Tennessee. Inside room 4B, they found a laptop still running. On screen, an open video call quickly disconnected, but the background in the feed showed Marcus Vellen's face, framed on a wall behind the speaker. A shrine to him. And pinned below it, a map with 10 red X's all across the U.S. One near a juvenile detention center, one near a courthouse, one near a major university. But the centermost mark was directly on Washington, D.C., more specifically, on Union Station. The countdown wasn't just about revenge, it was a demonstration to make Marcus's vision impossible to ignore. I knew using facial recognition and satellite drone sweeps, agents identified one of the lambs. Former correctional officer Jenna Pike, fired in 2022 for unlawful surveillance of inmates. Now, she was on camera, disguised, entering Union Station 2 days prior with a hard-shell duffel bag. And when she left, there was no bag. The station was evacuated. Inside a maintenance locker, agents found it. Not a bomb, not chemicals, but a broadcast unit, pre-wired, set to live stream on Marcus's birthday. And the message, cued for upload, "We are not shadows. We are the consequence. And judgment walks beside you." The FBI blocked the signal. The live stream never went live, but the message was received. Every major news outlet picked up the story. Domestic cult movement foiled, doctrine followers exposed. But something felt off, too clean, too fast. When Agent Reyes reviewed the body cam footage from the raid, she noticed something. None of the lambs resisted, not one. They wanted to be caught. Inside one of their jackets, a note. The shepherd brought silence, the lambs brought vision. Now, the wolves will bring the storm. It was signed, Phase 5. The guard handed Agent Reyes an envelope that had appeared in her mailbox. It read, "The shepherd is gone. The lambs are known, but the wolves are already among you. The final reckoning." In a system designed to contain him, he built a movement. Across 5 prisons, 17 deaths, 3 known accomplices, and 1 chilling doctrine, Marcus Vellen, the shepherd, never once left his cell. But his reach was only the beginning. Because the most dangerous part of his plan wasn't what happened inside those walls. It was what was about to happen outside. And it all started with a bus crash. September 3rd, 4:42 p.m., Highway 11, just outside Lancaster County. A correctional bus carrying 6 inmates overturned on a rain-slick road. 2 officers were injured, no fatalities, except 1 inmate never made it back to the new facility. A man named Devin Maris, a known follower of Marcus Vellen, former Black Ridge inmate, transferred to Millstone, then rerouted to a new private prison, Gray Hollow. But before the crash, Devin received something in the mail, a small brown envelope. Inside, a Bible page and a name, Elise Vellen, Marcus's estranged daughter. Elise Vellen had spent the last 10 years hiding from her past. New name, new city, no press, no interviews. She had even testified against her father at trial, revealing his obsession with purification, his delusions of sainthood. But Devin Maris had other plans. He never showed up at Gray Hollow. Instead, 3 days later, Elise reported someone had broken into her home. No valuables taken, but scrawled on her bathroom mirror was a chilling message. The shepherd falls, the lambs rise. And taped beneath it, a picture. Her as a child, standing next to Marcus, smiling in a church pew. She never released that photo, which meant someone inside the movement still had access to Marcus's personal archive. Agent Carla Reyes, now leading Operation Cloister, reviewed every letter Marcus had ever sent. One, dated 6 years ago, stood out. It read, "If the lambs fail, then the daughter must bleed, for only through her silence will the shepherd ascend." Elise wasn't just a victim. She was the failsafe, a final offering, a public martyr. And with her disappearance, everything escalated. A 24-hour manhunt was launched. Elise's phone was off. Her car found abandoned at a rest stop. Then came the footage. Surveillance from a gas station. Devin Maris filling up a stolen car. Elise unconscious in the back seat. Her wrists bound, eyes open. Still, alive. And next to him, another figure, a woman, blonde, petite, a face Reyes recognized instantly, Sarah Vale. Marcus's disciple wasn't just alive, she was orchestrating Phase 4. The vehicle was traced to a rural property in Missouri, a 20-acre compound once owned by the Church of Final Mercy. A cult disbanded in 1996 after child endangerment charges. Inside the compound, agents found 7 bunk beds, ritual robes, a blood-stained altar, and on a chalkboard one phrase, "The shepherd is silent." Marcus had stopped speaking, no letters, no confessions, no food. He was on a hunger strike, waiting. At 2:14 a.m., drone footage confirmed 2 bodies moving Elise inside the main chapel. SWAT moved in. Explosives breached the rear entrance. Gunfire erupted. Devin Maris was shot. Sarah Vale escaped through a tunnel system built beneath the compound. Elise, unconscious, but alive. On the altar beside her was a live video feed of Marcus. He was watching everything, smiling. He whispered one sentence. Before the feed cut, the daughter refused to kneel, but the world still will. And on Sarah's laptop, we covered hours later, they found a file titled The Final Doctrine. The Final Doctrine was more than instructions. It was a manifesto for chaos. Inside were over 300 pages detailing target profiles, journalists, psychologists, clergy, step-by-step brainwashing procedures, schedules for harvest rituals, diagrams for small self-contained flocks, autonomous cells, hidden in plain sight, in neighborhoods, schools, shelters. But the most terrifying discovery? The opening line, Phase 5 begins when the shepherd dies. And 5 hours later, at Black Ridge Prison, Marcus Villan was found dead. Cause? Massive overdose. Intentional. Self-inflicted. He ended his life to start something bigger. In the months that followed, over 40 arrests were made in connection to the Lamb cells. 12 hidden compounds were discovered across 3 states. 9 officers were charged with conspiracy and corruption, and Operation Cloister expanded to an international task force. But many cells are still unaccounted for, and parts of the Final Doctrine remain uncracked. Elise Velen, now in protective custody, has refused interviews. But one leaked document shows her handwritten note. He may be dead, but some people still believe he was right. Marcus Velen was one man, but his story is a warning, a blueprint of how influence spreads, like wildfire in the darkest corners of our institutions. He never escaped, never touched his victims, never fired a gun, but through fear, charisma, and calculated silence, he started something that still hasn't ended. If you found this story chilling, disturbing, or eye-opening, subscribe to Silent Justice for more real-life cases like this, where truth hides in plain sight. Leave a comment. Do you believe Marcus acted alone? And don't miss our next story. A prison guard vanishes. 3 days later, a new inmate arrives, claiming to be him. Until then, stay alert, stay awake, and remember, justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers.